This is a Paramilitary 2 Chinese clone comparison. I'm going to compare two Chinese clones to one genuine OEM Spyderco Paramilitary 2. These are all camos with plain blades, plain silver blades. I've got the boxes here. This is the real box, and these are two clone boxes, and they are extremely close. I've also got another box of a Southern that I'm going to compare. I've compared boxes in other videos. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because looking at boxes is like looking at tea leaves. Mainly because of this. Here's the genuine one and here's the fake one, and if you'll notice, they're both printed in China. So about the only thing I can say about fake boxes is usually for some reason, because the way they're handled and shipped, I think a lot of it is handling, is a lot of times they've got some blemishes on them from sliding around, getting dented up, beat up, scratched up, buffed up, that kind of thing. The genuine Spyderco boxes are usually pristine when you get them, usually. So, you know, they both come from China. It's just the handling of who's handling these things and how much they care about them when they handle them. Obviously, Spyderco is not going to allow a very overpriced knife, in my opinion. Very nice knives, but overpriced knives. They're not going to sell stuff that the boxes are just plastic boxes but look like hell. These are good renditions of these boxes, though. You look at the gradients. The gradients are pretty smooth on them. You can see the gradient on the real box here goes all the way to the end. On the fake boxes, it kind of fades out. Sometimes the gradients on the bottoms go almost all black in here, and you say, But you know, something I'm going to show you here is a real box, and you'll see that the gradient kind of fades. This is a Brad Southern, and you see the gradient kind of goes dark up there. So don't pay a lot of attention to that. In addition, don't pay a lot of attention to how big the little tooth is in the mouth of the Spyder. Some people look at that, I can tell you. I've seen genuine boxes have small teeth, and genuine boxes have bigger teeth like these have. So you can't look at that. A lot of people analyze the barcoding on them and say, well, you know, if the bars don't touch the numbers, the Arabic numbers, then it's a fake. And I can say that pretty much, here's two genuine Spydercos on the right, and here's two fake Paramilitary 2s on the left, and I would say that that kind of bears true, really. I haven't seen an exception to that yet, but I'm not sure I would go with that very heavily because that's easily correctable, because after all, these are just laser printer labels that they printed off and stuck on a box. Easy to fix, so I would not worry about that. One of the things I do kind of look for is I make sure that the numbers match up. So let's see, let's take the Brad Southern out of there. If you look at the barcode numbers, and you can look at the barcodes too, if I can see these from this far off, is I've had some numbers not match. Let's see if these numbers all match. 716104, 10685. Yes, they are all the same. And then sometimes, actually I haven't seen this. Usually if the number matches, the actual barcode matches too. And all these barcodes look exactly the same. You know, other than the difference in the distance of the barcode. They look like if I scanned them, I'm just glazing over them real fast. They look like if I scanned them, they would scan and spit this number out. So these are date codes. GL is date code, and I don't know what these little numbers off to the bottom right are. I'm not sure anybody knows what those are. But these are date codes of when they were manufactured. These are two Chinese Paramilitary 2s that are made by a different manufacturer. Each one of them is a little different, which is one of the reasons why I'm going to show them today. So let me get them out. One box is empty because I'll explain that in a second. This is a fake right here. Comes in this thing that is very similar to the Spyderco flat plastic sleeve. Here's the fake. Back in the box. I could go over the foams in these boxes. Let me go over that real quick. Is one of the ways to tell, and it's going to be more difficult in this, is if you take the foam out, you can see through that foam. It's thin. The foam also is as big as the bottom of the box or bigger. That is almost, I mean, that's always been a fake in my experience. Here is the real Spyderco. It's got a very similar sleeve, but it's a little smaller plastic sleeve. You pull the foam out, you would be able to see, let me pull the foams out and show them to you on top of each other. is the foam for the Spyderco is much smaller. They're always undersized. There's always a gap around them in the box. In addition, you can see that you can see through. It's very thin, cheap foam on the Chinese one, and it's very dense foam on the Spyderco. If this box were not having problems, you can see the paper on here is not, it's got a little adhesive in there that's let go. If this were not that way, when you put the foam on a genuine Spyderco in the box, they usually show a little white around them because they're actually undersized. So if I can hold that down. They usually show more than that, but this thing's pushing up. There you can see. They usually show about that much foam. Maybe 2 to 3 millimeters of a foam of the white shows around the foam. I found that to be pretty much 100% consistent on factory boxes, that the foam is always undersized. Now this one, because the adhesive is letting go on this piece of paper here, wax box, is it's making it fit, but it doesn't. That foam is, you know, a little small. If it were pulled down, if it were settling down, or probably if I stuck this in the fake box, which the plastic is, or the paper is not let go, you can see it's not really formed well here. You can see that there's a white space around it. That has always been, in my experience, shows you that that is a genuine piece of foam, and all the Chinese ones go in there and they fit either oversized or fit perfectly. Small boxes, large boxes, medium-sized Spydercos, they all do that. They all fit perfectly. Now I've got these mixed up, so who knows which one goes with which. Let me slide those off to the side there. Sometimes the red on the boxes, there's a little more orange on the fakes. It's not quite a deep blood red. It's kind of an orange blood red, like it's an orangish blood red as opposed to a deep blood red, if that makes sense. So here's the two knives. I can tell you when I pick them up in the dark, I can tell which one's which. Two ways. Right off the bat is this angle right here on the G10 that's on the lock. You can see this is the fake, and it comes right here. When you run your finger across that, it is sharp. Relatively sharp. It's a sharp edge. When you look at the real Spyderco, it is a very smooth sweep. If you look at it from above, the real one is on the top. You can see this angle here. This is a smooth sweep. So if you pick this up in the dark and run your fingers across the lock area, in the dark I can tell this is the real one. The other way to tell is the G10 on real Spyderco G10, except for maybe the Tenacious's, the cheap series, the Chinese series of Spydercos. When you take your thumb and push into it, so here's the real one, here's the fake one, is you can listen to it. It's sharp, it feels sharp. Here is the fake. So it's just got a tooth to it. So when you pick up a Spyderco, it should feel like it's really got a tooth to it. The other thing to look at is the edge of the G10 on a fake, on a real one, is it's almost, not quite, it's a 90 degree, and then they've just knocked the edge off just to make it smooth. But if you take your finger and push on it, it feels, you know, like a smooth 90 degree. Whereas if you look at the fake, you can see that they've rolled this edge more. And it actually feels, the way they've buffed it, it feels smooth. And it feels like a radius, it's rounded. And on some of their knives, they do this more than others. So you can see that edge along there, and along in the finger area. You can see how wide it is. On the military fakes, this is really pronounced, even more so than here. But on a real one, they haven't polished it over as much, and it just feels more like a 90 that they just broke the edge over on. So the real one's on the top and the fake is on the bottom. See if you can appreciate how much of the G10 they kind of polished over. Tell you the truth, you know, as far as, except it makes it a little slipperier, is that in your hand, the fake has a smoother, more finished feel to it. This has got, the scales are much more angular on it, the way they cut. And to tell you the truth, I usually like the patterns on the Chinese G10 camos better. They seem more complex and have more colors to them, and they just seem like they're broken up more. I don't know. I just like the G10 camo on the Chinese knives a little better, to tell you the truth. Let's see, I got another one here. And I'll explain to you why this knife's in pieces in a minute. So there's 2 Chinese camo patterns, and here's the Spyderco on the top. The other difference is there's always something kind of going on with the lanyard holes. I guess let me explain to you why I'm pulling in this third one in pieces. Here's my third one. The reason why it's in pieces here is because I went to take it apart for some reason. I think it had a bad action on it. No matter what I could do out of the box, it really just kind of sucked. And so I went to take it apart to kind of clean it up and maybe clean up lubricate it and everything. And I did it someplace where I did something stupid. I did it where in case something dropped or bounced, it was almost guaranteed to go lost in my garage. And that's what it did. And so I'm missing part of the pivot. And so I can't put the knife back together. So there's two things about that. One is I've got spare parts for things, and the other thing is I can see what's inside these things and how they've done them. So I'll leave my third fake Spyderco off here, and we'll pull in pieces to examine. One of the things I want to look at was the lanyard holes. So let's look at the lanyard holes on 3 of these guys. Let's see. Not going to be able to get exactly the same view here, but the real one is on the right. And this is 3 different ways to do these holes. Come on. So the real one is on the right. You can see it, the one in the middle is really kind of cheap looking. It's kind of like an aluminum ferrule that's been shoved in there. The real one on the right has got a little chamfered radiused edge, and it's much thinner. But then here's the fake on the left, and you can see it's even different. So if you were just looking like most of them are like that one, this one is kind of a hybrid in between them. So you might have a little trouble discerning those. And I'm trying to do things that you could easily appreciate. And you can see that there's a little bit of difference in the, I don't know if there's any difference in the quality of the side of those that you could appreciate. But it's mainly the lanyard hole itself is certainly, if you see this one in the middle, it's a big, wide, looks like a piece of cheap aluminum tube. Now this one is kind of raised up. And there's the real one. So the lanyard tube is one thing to look for. Like I said, the biggest thing is this edge right here. I haven't seen any of the fakes that anybody's got that right yet. And it's such an easy thing to fix. It's just absolutely crazy that they didn't do it. The clips are a little different. And they're different on all 3 of these knives. The clip in the middle one is, let's see, the real one's on the right. This, let's just go over that real quick. Very elegant clips. They're well polished. The edges are finished. If you see where they cut them. This side here where they finished it. It's fairly smooth. Here's a fake. And let's see if you can see on this fake. It's kind of got almost like a patina to it. I don't know if you're going to be able to appreciate that today, and because what I'm saying in the viewfinder you may not be able to appreciate, but I'm sure it's some type of oxidation. It actually looks pretty neat the way it is. It's kind of got a grayish patina to it. It's not perfectly polished. The sides of it look about the shape of it looks about the same, but if you look at the edge, it's very rough across here where it was cut. I don't know if it was cut with a laser or what, but I think it was something heated and cut this thing out maybe. And they didn't spend any time at all polishing the edges of this one. I mean, it's not rough where it would cut you or anything. It's smooth, but it's just, I don't know if that's, it's the way it was cut out. It's pretty rough on the sides. And the real one is not like that. The real one is kind of smooth. So let's look at this one. Yeah, this other fake has got the same issue. So if you were to get a picture and you saw the side of that thing, and it just looks kind of like it should look smooth. Now the finish on this one's pretty good. The shape of it is pretty good. It is very close and could probably be used interchangeably with the Spyderco. Some people analyze where these spiders are on these things. You can see that the spiders are, both of them are slightly higher, but they're in 3 different positions. The one on the left is the highest. The one in the middle is a little lower, and then the real Spyderco is even lower. So the positions vary on these things, and I'm sure if you had multiple Spydercos in your hand, the position might vary on genuine knives as well. That is pretty much about all of it. The other thing that I've noticed is that this little area here, I'll see if it does it on both of them. This little finger on the where the lock is, the lock side of the G10. If you run your finger across that side, this little cutout here is got a sharp edge on it, right there. That G10 is sharp. Matter of fact, if I kept this knife, I would want to file that off a little bit. This one, I think you can even see it. They've rounded it off a little bit, and it's pretty smooth across here. And so when you run your finger across this piece of the G10, this little shelf thing here where the lock is at, on the lock side, you don't really feel that. So this is smooth and this is smooth. You run your finger across both of them at the same time, and it's a nice finished knife for a G10. This one, though, you know, you get the edge here on the closest side, and then you get this edge over here, and when you run your finger across there, you can feel them both pronounced. So the other thing I wanted to go over is the hardware. The screws on these things are different. Is if you look at the one on the right, the Spyderco, it actually looks, you know, at first you might think, well, that's a pretty cheap looking screw. Look at it. It looks like it's not even cut very well, and at first it just looks like the Chinese one here on the left. It looks like it's a much better made screw. Well, it's not, and I'll tell you why. Is that when you go to stick your tool in there, you know, these are bigger, probably soft. When you go to stick your tool in those holes, this initial area there that's kind of rounded out is you can slide the tool in there and it locates it, you know, this way, so that it slides in there, whether it's mated up with the edges of the Torx fastener to go in the little splines in there, whether it's mated up or not, it sticks into the hole, and then you just turn it and clock it a little bit and it slides down into the connector. So it's kind of like a feeding mechanism for your tool. You stick it in there, it initially locates it in these two axes, and then the depth is when you turn it and then the spline engages. This does not have that. You have to slide it around doing this with your tool and turn it to get it to engage in there. That's why these are a little deeper than this, because this is just the engagement without the feed-in point. And if you look at all the screws, even the little ones, they're done that way, so that you get your tool in there kind of sloppy, and then you turn it and it locks down in there, and it clocks down where the splines engage of the Torx of your Torx wrench. So a lot of the Chinese ones are made exactly like this. And at first you look at the Spyderco screws and you say, God, those things are kind of sloppy looking, but they're really not. They're all countersunk the same amounts, and but those are a feeding mechanism to help your wrench feed in there. I'm going to go over the parts of this. There's one more thing I did notice. I don't know if I can get a good enough look in here of the difference. I can definitely show you on this one. So it's the side that's the off-lock side. And I'll see if I can catch this in the real one. And both of the fakes are the same way. The real one has the skeletonized area here and here. It's got two skeletonized areas that are cut out. Both of the fakes are missing this cutout. So here is the real one. And let me see, this is the off-lock side. This is going to be very, yeah, I think you can just catch, yeah, you can see up in there. You can just catch the fact that that it's got two skeletonized areas inside there. To lighten it up a little bit. Just something that I noticed on both these fakes. These areas are not skeletonized. Let's see if we can see on this one. You can see that skeletonized area on this side, but it's not there on this side, on the inside of the scale, on the inside of the liner. I think that's it. I'll just show you some of the pieces of this one. I'm not going to go over the hardware. It's all, I believe it's exactly, you can see the screws are the same as the other one. I'm missing half the pivot, so I can't put it back together, fix it. I know that AliExpress, you can buy scales with Torx tools. They just sell paramilitary 2 scales. So it's possible these scales could fit a pair of 2. I could take them off, possibly match them up and sell them, I guess. You know, somebody wanted to buy a set of scales. Here's the inside of the scale. This one also, on that shelf, it's sharp. You can see it's cut kind of rough, and I mean it's sharp enough that if you push down on it and drug your finger, you're going to get an abrasion on there. It's going to scratch you up. I mean, you could draw blood with that thing. And the real one doesn't have that. I do like their patterns though. Here's the inside of the other side. The barrel's got a little step in there. I think they were trying to make this one closer. I think they were trying to more closely approximate a real one when they were doing this. So they're trying to get better. And actually, if this thing were down and not quite sticking out so much, it would, you know, you would have to look close and see that this one doesn't have a chamfer on it, on the edge. The clip is done real nice on this. Here's the lock. I've never taken my para apart to see what differences there are. There's the detent ball. Let's see if there's any difference in this, how much difference there is. I think there was maybe a slight difference in the size of these pins on the real versus fake. So if you look at that pin, I think it's a little smaller. I think it's the same for the other fake too. It's these things are the same size. So those pins are slightly different. That's that pin right there. Bigger on the real Spyderco. I didn't go over a lot on the blades. Maybe I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do the logos here in a second, I think. Here's the one of the fake blades. Usually the logos are not as crisp and not cut as well. So that when you go to turn them in certain lights, they'll fade away where they're almost gone. This one looks actually not too bad. when you turn them, they kind of ghost out gray and almost disappear, like there's no logos on some of the fakes. Now, I think they have to do a pretty good job on these paras because they're very popular knives, and so actually they look like they've done pretty good on these. Let's just look at the logos real quick and the blades, I guess. The reason why I didn't really spend a lot of time on this is because there isn't a lot to tell here as far as differentiating real versus fake. And all you can do is you can turn it. I can tell you that most of these Spydercos, the blades are ground pretty good, the fakes, and sometimes they get them where the points are a little, you know, not really well done. I've had a police that was like that where the point wasn't real done. But really, you know, these two knives, you'd be hard pressed. The real one is on the right here. You'd have a hard time looking at the blades and telling what's what. There's some difference in the location on these. Obviously, people say, "Oh, look at that, it's different." But you know, how are you going to, number one, tell that? It's interesting that the hole is bigger on the. I just noticed that the hole is bigger on the fake than the real one. You know, I just don't think that you can tell by that kind of stuff unless you just know that particular model in and out. And then I haven't looked at enough paramilitaries to tell if there's. You got to understand there can be manufacturing variances in these things where they print it all slightly different. So they could be, a real one could be printed this way too. So I mainly look at the level of the etch, the lasering, and see whether it's, sometimes you pick up fakes and they are really, when you turn them in certain lights, they disappear. But these really don't do that so much. So and so I'm mainly trying to point out things that you could look at on an eBay auction and tell. If I were going to look at an eBay auction, I would want the seller to show me this area right here. I would want to see that in a picture. The other thing is I would kind of want to see these two areas back here. If you were looking at a picture of the actual knife you were buying, and I would certainly examine the hardware and see if you know, it's got that kind of hardware. Those would be the things I would look at in a photograph of the knife to try to ascertain whether it was a fake right off the bat. Just notice that thing about the holes. Is to look at the hardware, turn it around and say, show me this area right here, and then look at the lanyard holes. And they're obviously trying to do better on the lanyard holes, so unless you had a really close-in macro of that, you probably have a hard time telling even on that whether you were getting a fake or not. It has to have that camphor in it, so where the edge is, you know, they've ran a little bit